I think people look at stress as completely a negative thing. And I want to tell you that if you don't have stress in your life, then you're probably going to die because there's something called eustress, right? It's EU stress, which is the right amount of stress that's going to motivate you and incline you to take action. And then there's also too little stress, where if you have no stress in your life whatsoever, then there's no goals.
Hello and welcome to the Posture Dojo Podcast. My name is Sam Miller. I'll be your host on this postural transformation journey as I share some stories from my own healing of an 85-degree hyperkyphoscoliosis, as well as speaking with experts from a variety of fields. Some you might expect, some that might be a bit more surprising. Today, we have Dr. Jason Wan on the podcast, who is pretty dialed into what we're dealing with and talking about on this podcast. He is a doctor of physical therapy with a specialization in orthopedic knowledge. How do you describe what you do, Jason?
Yes, I think at least in the United States, there are doctors of physical therapy. It's a three-year stint where you're going through the ringer of going through anatomy and learning about all different fields. And then you try to hone in and specialize in a specific field that you enjoy. And so some go through a board certification. So my certification is in orthopedics, and that's specializing in anything from post-surgical care, anything in relation to the spine, the ligaments, the joints, the muscles, and the nerves of the body. We treat everything from head to toe. And I've also been able to treat my own body through chronic neck and back issues after a couple car accidents. And I also have had and diagnosed with thoracolumbar scoliosis and still live with it today, but I experienced those symptoms. And so that's what I try to embody for a lot of my clients.
Right now on social media, fascia gets a lot of attention as that kind of outer layer of scaffolding of infrastructure that kind of makes up our posture. But we can't forget about all these joints and ligaments and bones that are the bricks and the fundamentals. Because as far as I'm aware, fascia we're still understanding it, but it only recently became understood as our largest organ over the past 10 years. Was that something that you were exposed to in that realm? And how do you integrate it now with how you kind of perceive the body, and how do you approach your kind of restructuring of your musculoskeleton?
Yeah, and fascia wasn't widely popularized, nor was it actually pushed to us when we were in physical therapy school back in 2012. I think nowadays fascia is well known as this wide web of things that are interconnected. It even holds emotions, and especially with some of these oblique lines. So you're looking at somebody that comes in for physical therapy, they may come in with low back pain. And so you're really just doing these very simple things. I've seen it, and it's quite generalized. It's doing a little bit of transverse abdominis type of contractions, and it's just very basic, versus somebody that kind of understands that lumbar paraspinals connects to the lats actually interconnect to the contralateral glutes. And so somebody that comes in that has a specific postural dysfunction, they may come in with gait dysfunction, they may come in with a certain amount of, they bend, but then they rotate in a specific way. And I think a lot of these fascial lines restricts them from either staying in alignment, being able to be strong out of alignment. And for me, I was not able, when I got into those two car accidents, I can tell that my neck was kind of contorted. I can tell that my chest bone was kind of tilted to one side. And even then, just when you're kind of out of that alignment position, just even sitting for longer periods of time. I had to drive from school all the way 70 miles away, drive back. I couldn't even stay in a car for longer than 10, 20 minutes. I have to get out and actually move my body. And once I did, I realized that, hey, there's something movement is somewhat like medicine. If we're not moving, our body tends to decay and our fascial line is kind of restricted. Overall, I started to discover a lot of that even prior to PT school, because the car accident happened before that. And nowadays, I'm doing a mixture of barbell training, but also using cables and bands in order to pull my fascia into different directions. And as long as I'm maintaining and making mobility a habit, my body feels relatively good, even despite some early disc degeneration.
Yeah, I noticed you're training for goals that I think are at least very aligned with mine, and I think a great kind of direction to have for a lot of people, because the conventional gym or workout you're building strength, and it's a kind of a different direction. My direction is all terrain agility as well as longevity. I'm playing the long game here. I'm out of pain thanks to the movement and these kind of things, but the direction is certainly becoming more bulletproof, less being able to recover. Like when you're on a hike and you take a misstep and you're able to recover with extra mobility and extra strength, it's pretty cool. Being able to do any sport, or from kite surfing to snowboarding, whatever it may be, being ready to do that. And then also prevent injury if anything happens in those. And playing that long game of gravity isn't stopping, time isn't stopping. And we do notice that wherever there's stagnancy hiding in your body, there's been issues. And that was the big one that I had to kind of overcome about 6 years ago. So what's your kind of North Star in your programs and your training?
Yes, I think the North Star mainly is I definitely prioritize strength training as the means for longevity. I'm glad that you said that word, and we have very similar goals. Like I'm 35 years of age. That's not young. It's not old just yet. I'm a father of two. And for me, I want to stick around as long as possible. One of the reasons why I even started my business in the first place and helping kind of high achieving parents worldwide is because my dad passed at an early age. He passed when I was just 19 years of age, and that coincided with the car accident. So car accident plus my dad passing away due to stage 4 colon cancer, it really shocked the body. It shocked my spine. It shocked the fascia. It shocked everything in my body. I got into a pretty depressed emotional state. I realized that in order for me to help people, I can't just, I honestly didn't want to stay in a clinic in San Francisco and just treat the way everyone was treating. It was a little bit generalized. It was very insurance based. And I want to do a more holistic way of treating. I know that word, that has so much buzz around it, that holistic, comprehensive way. But I do really span the gamut of teaching people how barbells and dumbbells can be used as the medicine versus reaching for actual medication. And because if my body is stronger and my muscles are more resilient to stress, then my body is more resistant to gravity. And if my body's more resistant to gravity, then I am going to exhibit less stress throughout my life, less disability. In terms of scoliosis, I think that a lot of people with scoliosis tend to have this aversion towards scoliosis because it's okay, well, it's going to like further bend me in a different way. But as somebody that's lived through scoliosis and still has it, you can diagnose me. I still do pretty heavy weight training, but at the same time, I still balance a lot of that. So I still do my soft tissue work. I work on the lengthening of my lats and my quads, and I make sure everything feels good. And I prioritize mobility through the day. So I'm not just somebody that's sitting at a desk, these keyboard warriors for a long period of time, where then gravity just kind of pulls me into these positions. I'm definitely like every hour, at least even every half hour, I have kettlebells and foam rolls and a bunch of things just to keep my body mobile and pain-free. So I guess strength training kind of is at the forefront for my longevity, because if you're not strength training, they say that it decreases your risk by 32% of dying of anything, all-cause mortality. It's insane what strength training can do for you. And then mobility, as well as just kind of looking at the nutrition front too. And don't forget that sleep is also like that reset button to lengthen your body and to ensure that we have the energy and capacity to do more things the next day.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just slight little tweaks that you could make as you're sleeping. For me, it's kind of like getting that extension in the lower back part of the head. Create some amazing, because then when you're going into these deep sleep waves, you're like, I feel some incredible alignment, because ultimately this is about relaxing the nervous system and allowing for this alignment and elongation to happen. That will happen if we're assisting it and we're removing these constrictions and restrictions and different patterns that we might have that are holding us back. Literally. I'm curious, what are your favorite tools for getting through a long work day on the computer? What's your computer strategy? Because I know that was sort of like during my teenage years when I had that compromised spine, and in particular a T10 wedge-shaped vertebrae, I was on the computer, ignoring the problem, and I got sucked in, and it created that hyper kind of focus. Huge kind of danger there to kind of be aware of. I think as we go into VR, I think that'll actually be at least a healthier way of getting online, and maybe even if we're getting online, we're in it, and then when we're not, we're out. And hopefully that's at least each person. That's my personal strategy of how I'm gonna navigate the future metaverse. But having that freedom of movement, I think, is a much healthier way. In the 2020s, the last years of keyboards and screens, how are you? What's your strategy for a long work day?
I have a ton of strategies, and to be honest, I have a ebook that I've revised twice over, and I probably need to continue to revise it further as time goes on and AI and VR continue to get popularized. I have so many things that the audience can't see right now, but as one, I have my cup of coffee on this side. I drink a little bit of caffeine in the morning, but I also have a gallon of water. I think one thing is I drink a gallon of water today. That just enables me to have to get to the bathroom and actually move my body instead of staying in one place. I think a lot of people get very dehydrated, and then there's a huge cortisol spike when your body's just so fatigued. And then I also have this thing right here. This is a Pomodoro timer. So I think that if you have great habits, like probably you and I have incredible habits, we're just always getting out and exercising. But even if I have great habits, which I think I do, I still like to set reminders for myself. This is a Pomodoro timer. It's an octagon that basically I can set 30 to 45 minute blocks. So if I set it for 30 minutes, I just set it down. 30 minutes of just very concerted business work, talking to clients, etc., whatever I need to get done. This is going to go off. It's going to blink in my face. Once it blinks, it alerts me. It's a visual and it's an auditory trigger to get me to do some sort of movement. So I have my kettlebell. Again, I have my bands and my foam roll. So 30 minutes, I'm going to kind of listen and be mindful of what my body needs. So if like my lower back is feeling a little tight, okay, cool. At that 30, 45 minute mark, get down to the floor, do some lumbar rotation, do some sort of exercise, some sort of breathing. If, for example, my neck and back need some care, I'm going to be doing some kettlebell windmills and things to get some thoracic rotation and extension. And that's what I do. It's like I take advantage of the Pomodoro timer. Anytime it goes off, I insert an exercise. I also have a garage gym that's literally 10 feet away from my home office, which I know a lot of people don't have that benefit. And I'm standing on a walking treadmill. The only reason why I'm not walking is because I want to be courteous to your audience. But nonetheless, I'm usually walking pretty much all day.
Nice. Okay, there's a strong movement strategy there. The less friction we have to these kind of things, the more we do it, right? If you're tucking away the sweets and the bad habits in different places away from you with lots of friction, you're just naturally going to follow the path of least resistance. So you can kind of hack that modality. And I guess speaking on the path of least resistance, let's go into that and how you approach that. Because when we have these compromised postures and these collapses, our breath will, if we're not bringing attention to it, it will also go through the path of least resistance through our bodies. And those paths and that holding structure can get pretty ingrained. So how do you approach that in the body?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of breathing, I think that one thing for sure, and one of the muscles that are more severely neglected in rehabilitation is the diaphragm, right? Because the diaphragm is innervated by C3, C4, C5. So it's innervated by pretty integral nerves that are very important for survival. And the saying goes in physical therapy, the diaphragm is innervated by C3, C4, C5. It keeps the body alive, right? And if we're not embodying and using our diaphragm appropriately, which is our primary muscle of respiration, we're going to tend to use secondary muscles of respiration, sometimes even at rest. So I say to my clients sometimes, it's like when we want to use our secondary muscles, it's because we're either exerting ourselves or we're running away from a bear. So if I put a bear in your room and you're like, you get really excited and you're sympathetic overdrive, you're going to kick in your scalenes and your pec minor and some of these other muscles. But there's a lot of people that are nowadays, everybody's a keyboard warrior. So everybody is being exposed to blue light. Everyone has project deadlines. I know in places in Europe, the quality of life is better because the work hours are shorter and all that. So I believe US should even shift in that direction. But when you're under such high cortisol secretion all day and you're always stressed and you have really negative coping mechanisms that aren't exercise related and you stray towards smoking, drinking, and sitting on the couch and watching Netflix in these weird contorted positions, I think that's when our body goes into decay. So going back to the diaphragm is one, address the lifestyle, address some of the stressors, but at the same time, try to teach people to use their diaphragm more appropriately. So they're not using their secondary muscles like their scalenes, which might, if the scalenes are tightening, it's going to pull your head into side bending. If people are using the rectus abdominis, some people even, I think, breathe honestly with their hip flexors. So it's pulling them into a forward state or even a side bending state. I really feel that you learn how to incorporate more diaphragmatic breathing. And it's pretty simple, simply enough, just like kind of put a band across your ribs. And then instead of breathing, for example, some people breathe with their neck, and that's why they exhibit a lot of neck pain. Try having them breathe into their concavity, breathe into their diaphragm, add a band around their rib cage, and have them breathe 360 degrees into that band. Give them some proprioception, or even put them in a position where they're lying down. It's much easier for the diaphragm. The diaphragm's in a more not even an overstretched state, but a more shortened state for that to contract appropriately. I guess there's a lot of strategies. It's just depending on how the patient or client presents to me. But once I see if there's any sort of diaphragmatic dysfunction, you have to address that first, followed by some of their emotional states. And that's why I consider myself more as a coach, is because I'm not just ignoring the stuff in their life that's contributing, like the emotional stressors that may be contributing to holding stress in their fascia, holding stress and holding certain postural states. In any case, I'm not sure if that's how it kind of jives with your philosophy, but I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think this is a way that I like to do things.
I agree. I think the diaphragm is a great one to bring the awareness to. Any maybe to open up someone's mind about how effective this can be. Like you mentioned, kind of a band, like an elastic band. Is there any particular go-to movements you're like, okay, let's make sure I'm breathing. Let's do some diaphragmatic mobility work. What would you give them?
Yeah, so there's probably a few. Again, one of them, I think that regardless of, I feel like the diaphragm's in a shortened or even an over lengthened state. There's something called the length tension curve, right? So our bicep is strongest at 90 degrees, right? It's over lengthened, sarcomeres are over lengthened, so therefore it can't contract. And I think that some people are like stuck in excessive lumbar extension or side bending, so their diaphragm is actually in a contorted state too. So kind of addressing, sometimes you have to do isometrics. Isometrics, if nobody knows what that is in the audience, it's holding tension in specific muscles, but there's actually no movement exhibited. So if you do a wall sit, you do a plank, you do a side plank, very often if somebody presents with like scoliosis and they have left-sided lumbar pain, I'll often tell them to load into that pain. So I'll have them do like a modified side plank, even if it's on the wall, depending on how irritable their body is. And then once they're actually contracting those muscles and they notice, okay, there's a reduction of 25% after that pain, I think then they're able to engage their diaphragm better, because some people that they breathe with lumbar extension. You can see them going to lumbar extension. And again, once you reduce pain, their body therefore can respond and recruit different muscles in different ways. And so therefore, then you can start off with the fundamental patterns of, okay, let's get you into quadruped. Quadruped's a more advanced way of strengthening the diaphragm. I usually get people in supine or hook lying where their feet are flat, and that way it flattens out their lumbar spine. Then you can actually add, for example, either you put your hands on the rib cage, you put even like a dumbbell or a kettlebell onto their belly, and you say, okay, put your hand on your chest. And if you feel that you're elevating your shoulders, you feel like your head's side bending, you feel like your sternum's elevating, your body's kind of extending off of the mat, and you need to learn how to just, again, add proprioception and mindfulness. Close your eyes and imagine yourself breathing down into the dumbbell. Push the dumbbell up towards the ceiling. And again, once you hit those fundamentals, then you can advance into seated progressions, then standing progressions, and eventually then they can embody weight training and do things in a way where weight training is not working against them, is working for them.
Yeah, amazing. That's the value of that surgically precise type of physical therapy, being able to do that kind of thing. Because I did bar squats for many years, like with all of the compensations, without breathing into the diaphragm, and I really cemented in an entirely different postural chain that wasn't in my best interest, because it was literally holding compression in my body. And it takes work to undo. It takes work to kind of undo a lot of this stuff. And so you've mentioned that mindfulness, that proprioception, and then let's move into this kind of concept of psychosomatic approach, which is including the psychological state, the emotional state of your mind as you're going into these areas in your body. When we're chronically holding a tension in a part of our body that we may not even know we have, that may have happened a very long time ago, and that was kind of a response, and we kind of redlined it and we got stuck in that state, and our body just, maybe it caused some issues and tried to tell us at that time, but we just ignored it and suppressed it, and then it's there. So then with this breath, with this proprioception, we can go in there, and then we have by imprinting a new, healthier, flowing emotional state, we're actually able to reprogram that. How do you approach that? Let's say you've got that tightened diaphragm. There's some emotions in there. That is a pretty emotional part of the body, right around the solar plexus as well. How do you approach it?
Yeah. I think in regards to how I approach my practice, there was an older model that people used to use, which was called more of a biomedical model. And that was essentially associating any form of disc-related injury, anything that you see on the MRI is justified as such, meaning that if you have a L5 disc herniation or a disc bulge, that is the exact contributor of your pain. Like there's nothing else. And it's just very pathoanatomical. It's associating everything that's broken or dysfunctional in your body as that is the cause. And we know now that is not the root cause, because they've done studies on thousands of people spanning from age 30 to 90. And you realize that no matter how well we take care of our body, we're still going to have disc bulges. We're still going to have some facet arthropathy. It's still going to happen. It's just a normal part of aging. Yet the kicker with the study was that every single person with these pathologies had no symptoms whatsoever. They were completely asymptomatic. So that in itself, the type of system where when somebody goes into the doctor's office and they're either prescribed, okay, you're having pain, so let's go ahead and give you an X-ray or an MRI, and let's also give you a little pain medication to send you your way. I feel that's a very negative, and that's negative reinforcing the fact that maybe because of their spine degeneration, that is the root cause of their pain. And if you simply look into the person's lifestyle, you ask the right questions, and I oftentimes give my clients like a very comprehensive onboarding form, asking them about their stress levels, how many kids they have, what they do for work, what are their job demands. You start to see that it's more than just physical. It's more than just a weak muscle that's contributing to their symptoms. You start to see that they're lacking sleep. You start to see that they're under a high amount of stress because they're a manager and their boss is always breathing down their neck. You start to see that they're having a relationship issues where it's creating strain in their relationship with their wife, and if they're having arguments and all that. So long story short, the biopsychosocial approach is telling you that not all pain is strictly physical. It's a manifestation of everything that we are, including our culture, our values, our beliefs, all the experiences that we've had in our lives. Hell, if you were made fun of a lot when you were younger, that can appear into your 30s, and you can start to manifest different irritable bowel syndrome and different pains that are going on in your body. So that's, once you start to discover more about that person, then you can start to layer in, obviously exercise still has a very strong, powerful parasympathetic drive for the body. So I think exercise is still at the forefront, but then you still have to address their habits and their behaviors and how they cope with stress. Because if you don't address that part, that elephant in the room, then I think you're really leaving half of their rehab off the table, and that may lead to a pretty subpar outcome or even a negative outcome because you didn't address it.
Yeah, the bio-psychosocial approach. Yeah, much more. I mean, those are the words that the conventional medical system is using to integrate a bit more of a holistic philosophy, which is great. So then that's where we're getting into some of these somatic work where you're kind of re-encoding new emotions in the body. One thing it seems you're honing in on is this relationship with stress that we all are subjected to if we plan on operating in our society, I guess. I mean, you can move away to a piece of land and a waterfall and not have to worry about too much and lower that. That's one way to negotiate with stress. But if you're trying to do things, you're trying to build things, you're on a mission, you're on a purpose, you have a intention, you are consistently intentioning your body and your mind in a certain direction. And that obviously is force, and then the stress that is created when you are envisioning a reality that is not real yet, but you're bringing it to life, but it's it's still there's a separation between this reality that you want to create and where you are now. And if things get in the way of that, these are all part of your stress. And in the body, it seems like that our heart, our breath. I mean, that's why I guess you started with the breath, but it's really like, what are the first things that happen, and then how do we approach improving our relationship with this stress?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to understand that there is a certain amount. I guess we'll go into stress, because I think you can then therefore relate it to the diaphragm and how the body can unfold itself. I think people look at stress as completely a negative thing. And I want to tell you that if you don't have stress in your life, then you're probably going to die because there's something called eustress, right? It's EU stress, which is the right amount of stress that's going to motivate you and incline you to take action. And then there's also too little stress, where if you have no stress in your life whatsoever, then there's no goals. There's nothing to strive for. There's no self-improvement. There's no progression. So therefore you're unhappy either way. So when you're in that state, and I've been in those states, I'm sure you have too, maybe not, but there's times where that balance of, your summer break, you have no summer school, you have nothing else to do. So I literally just, the entire time, I just played video games. I sat on a couch and I just vegged out, and then I would just eat for survival, go to sleep. And that little amount of stress creates, again, it perpetuates sedentary behavior. It perpetuates lack of goals, and you don't get anywhere in life. And then again, most Americans, they stray towards the side of overstress. They constantly perceive that they're always busy. They constantly perceive that there's too little time in the day. They constantly perceive that they're just always surviving just to pay their mortgage, and they're wondering if they're even parenting their kids. So all these things that, there's a book called by Dr. John Sarno's Mind Body Connection. It's like all these stressors, all these emotional stressors. You have these two beakers, right? One's emotional, one's physical. And the emotional beaker is like 8 ounces. The physical stress is also 8 ounces. So if the emotional stressors, eventually you're like filling up the water, you can tolerate a certain amount of stress. If it's 4 ounces, you have an 8 ounce glass, it's not going to overfill. But eventually what happens is you get fired, and then all of a sudden your kid yells at you and they're throwing a ruckus, and all of a sudden now your stress levels are like, it's like trying to fill up 10 ounces of water into an 8 ounce glass. And guess what happens? It overfills and makes a mess of things. And eventually that water has to go somewhere. So you're pouring some of that water into the physical beaker. And eventually those stressors, those emotional, financial, relationship stressors, it starts to manifest itself as pain in the body. It starts to manifest itself as fascia that can no longer move. And we're going to hold our stress into different areas. That's why some people, they hold a lot of stress in their shoulders. It's an actual emotional stressor that is manifesting itself as physical pain. Even these emotional stressors and cortisol secretion has been shown to decrease blood flow to specific areas, which therefore, when you have less vascular blood flow to your lower back, this is hence why a lot of people eventually get chronic low back pain. You see on MRIs, you get fatty infiltrates. You start to see lack of blood flow and less vascularity to the lower back. And it's because, is exercise going to fix that? It's not, exercise isn't going to fix that unless you address also the emotionals and, again, everything that they are.
And then the vices that can slip in there, the former habits of whether it's drinking alcohol, extra sugar, or emotional eating. Yeah. You get a lot of poor lifestyle choices that can just compound. And it's a fair call. I think it's been said that stress is one of the biggest factors to heart disease and all of these other ailments, this oxidization of the entire kind of like alchemical makeup of our body, kind of corroding us from the inside out. So I guess these are all the benefits of, I guess, working with someone such as yourself to start thinking about these ideas, because otherwise you're going to be going to these manual therapy or physical therapy sessions and walking away with a lot of the same issues. You're still swimming upstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing to kind of point out is this work called coping mechanisms. And, You look at even my kid, 3 years old, how do they cope? So if you take something away from them because they're acting up, they're going to start acting up even more. And that's the way that they cope. They cope by crying, they cope by throwing a fit. And as we get older, and now we can't just cry in a room and like sob on the floor and just roll on the floor, you know what I mean? It's not appropriate. So a lot of us instead will internalize or will hold in that stress. And sometimes when we don't outlet it, you don't have a supportive partner to be able to talk through these stressors. It's like literally you are outletting that stress. You're no longer letting that emotional beaker overfill to the point where then it's causing cardiovascular issues, it's causing digestive issues, it's causing poor gut motility, it's causing poor metabolism. Literally, stress will manifest itself across the board in every system of the body. And it's going to talk to other neurotransmitters, and it's going to secrete ghrelin, and then it's going to make you hungrier, and it's going to spike your blood pressure up. So I think, again, we go back to the diaphragm, and you just have to say to yourself, just lengthen the exhalation phase. It doesn't require a physical therapist just to breathe. We breathe just by automation, it's autonomic. But sometimes we're not breathing enough. We're not breathing frequent enough. We're not intentional enough with our breathing to simply just decrease some of that stress. And other things that you can think about as well as just giving gratitude. It's using certain other, for example, oxytocin, something that's secreted in mothers to deliver babies. That's a gratitude hormone. And gratitude can actually literally counteract cortisol. So just giving gratitude, being grateful, giving to others. I know we're going like in way different directions from where we were just at, but these things matter. And that's why even on my own podcast, just talking about how to decrease stress, give gratitude, exercise more, breathe longer, lengthen the exhalation phase. I mean, it all matters.
It does all matter. To ultimately the body you want, the body that you're going towards, right? To embody that, to not just see yourself as separate from it, to not see yourself as having some condition that prevents you from that, to be grateful for whatever resemblance you currently have of that body that you're building, both physically and emotionally as well. I guess the one question I had for you would be around, with your focus on mid-30s, 40s, starting to age, what type of dietary moves are you making in terms of maybe supplements? We know collagen is really popular right now, colostrum, there's the magnesium, obviously, and some K2 for the bone health. Are these things that you worry about, or you just focus on the whole food kind of diets?
I look at it all. I've been kind of known as like a supplemental nerd, and because the way I look at supplements is, and the word supplement, we just break that down. It's supplement it's not necessary, right? If you're getting all your foods and all the vitamins and minerals that you need in the form of whole foods, why not? But nowadays with 2 kids, you still have to think of supplements as, okay, if I'm lacking any vitamins, if I'm lacking anything, I want supplements to be used as like insurance, that just in case, if I'm not getting enough magnesium, that is why I take a magnesium supplement every single day. I take a daily vitamin every single day. I'm also pretty big on eating a relatively clean diet, and that comes in the form of foods that don't have as much like tons of ingredients. It's not made with vegetable oil. And so I'm really big on fruit. I'm also big on the forms of like just getting enough protein in a day. I think that most people that are on some sort of strength training plan need 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of protein in order to preserve muscle as you get older. So you're talking about longevity. You don't get anywhere if you're not eating sufficient protein. And the other things I kind of look at is, again, the water intake. I tell all my clients to get half their body weight in ounces every single day. And yeah, fiber intake as well. I think fiber, in order to just have good stools, make sure you don't stay constipated, that increases your blood pressure. I am getting in a sufficient 30 grams of fiber per day, especially that's a recommended daily intake for men. But yeah, nutrition is a huge component. I also take creatine monohydrate in terms of making sure that I maintain a level of agility and strength. And creatine is not just to improve your strength and performance in all aspects by 5 to 10%. Creatine has been shown to keep the brain healthy, to actually steer off Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and a lot of things. So I take creatine every single day for the past 10 years as well.
Yeah, sound strategy there. As someone with a hemivertebrate T10, so a wedge-shaped vertebrae in the T10, I can never fix my hyperkyphoscoliosis, which is I'll often get 18, 20, 22-year-olds. can I fix this? Should I even try to do something about this? Because they see that I'm doing something about it. And they're like, can I fix me? Can I be fixed? And it's a question that I'm constantly evolving my answer to. I'm still looking for better and better answers. But ultimately, I'm like, it's irrelevant to what you need to be doing right now. You need to be doing something, whether you can fix it or not, which is my current position on that. It's something that if your spine has been compromised, to me, that's a red alert in terms of you living on this planet with gravity. If you plan on living on this planet with gravity, then it's a red alert. Understand what's happening and work with it. And there's a common kind of a statement by Katharina Schroth, who developed the rotational angular breathing in the Schroth method. She was like, to not waste energy protesting fate, like to inspire hope and empower people. But the part about not to waste energy protesting fate. And that's what I think a lot of people are doing, is that they get quite depressed, quite compressed because of that state, and they don't feel like they can fix it, and therefore they don't do anything. And that's a really sketchy place to be. So, so I'm like, whether you can completely fix it or not, you still need to do pretty much exactly the same work. You need to try anyway. You need to do the things. Those things will help you along the way. They will prevent the curve from getting worse. They will empower you. You'll feel better. You'll have a better outlook on life, all the good stuff. Mm-hmm. So then I have a bone. I can't change the shape of this bone. Or can I? Over a very long period of time. Every cell in our body is replenished over a number of years. Between different parts of our body replenish it at different rates. And so I know I'm always going to have a very severe curve. Like I'm playing Jenga with a triangle wedge-shaped piece,
Sure.
Pretty much. But as I'm unfolding and as I'm aligning and as I'm building on that, I'm let's say almost permanently changing the structure of how my spine bears weight. And then I'm applying pressure on that bone in different ways as I kind of unfold. And I literally have to build my balance again as I unfold, because I have my center of gravity actually changes as I release these tensions and have a more aligned posture. So it's always been, I have to manage my expectations, and obviously, but I do know though, in 7 years, most of the cells inside of that bone weren't they've been replenished, they're new. So I'm just, and I do know that cells respond to the forces that we apply on it, right? I think it's called mechanotransduction, where a cell will respond to the way you push it. So if you're pushing on one side, it strengthens on that side. It reacts to the environment. And that's essentially what we do with strength training. And bones are actually shown to do that as well, right? When we train without strength training, bones weaken. So we can actually kind of encourage bone growth in certain ways. How much control do we actually have? How much could we actually direct our bones? And if so, from that orthopedic kind of outlook, how would you approach that? I know it's a bit of a left question.
I think, No. I think the way that you're kind of approaching it, the way that you said it, I 100% agree, is that it's valid to say that as we get older, if we take an MRI now in 2024 and we take an MRI in 2029 and 2034, we know that no matter what we do, whether you treated your body like garbage or you treated your body good, like you just put yourself in cloud nine, it's going to look different regardless of the circumstances, because there are always going to be normal age-related changes that occur in the body. And that's why I think even the words that we use for ourselves, and you were even saying you have these 18 to 22-year-old kids that say, hey, can I be fixed? And I think the words that we use for ourselves that perpetuate depression or anxiety and thinking that our diagnoses is like, it's the end of the road for us, right? The fact that I have a kyphotic curve is the end of the road. And as soon as we start to identify as a person that is damaged goods, we start to identify as a person that has early arthritis and that's a degenerate, the more that we embody that diagnosis, and we know that when we embody that diagnosis and we have a certain belief, that negative belief will weigh in on our actions, which probably means that you're not going to take any action if you have a crazy negative belief, and that's going to yield a negative result. But simply saying to yourself, one of my favorite things I say is, so even if I have early degeneration of my neck, even though I have thoracolumbar scoliosis, I literally say to myself, so what? I use that term all the time. So what? Because if I say so what, I'm not going to weigh in on my emotions and stay in this state of, I'm in 10 years, I'm just going to be even more degenerated. It's going to look even worse. I don't think of it that way. I just simply stay proactive. That's why I look at my diet and I try to optimize that every day. I try to get to bed on time, granted 2 kids. So sleep is the one place that I'm kind of wavering a little bit nowadays. But strength training, in the gym 7 days a week. My habits, pretty sound. Every single day, I move my thoracic spine 10 to 15 times literally per day. I marinate into my everyday. I get out of the shower, I do thoracic movement. Some things, the coffee's brewing, do some thoracic extension. I turn off the computer, I go upstairs, I kiss my kids, and I use a foam roll, and I get more thoracic mobility. That's what I do. It's just a normal part of my day. So I think, how much control do we have? I think we have a good amount, because when you look at the research of how many diseases in the world are due to strictly genetics and you had no control over it, just 2 to 3%. 2 to 3%. 97% of things are completely modifiable with lifestyle change. And I think that can empower anybody in this audience to say, were you really just dealt a bad set of hands? Was it because your mom had a chronic your mom had chronic low back pain, therefore it leaves you a life sentence of low back pain? No, but you might have embodied that because your mom complained all the time and you saw the ways that she coped with her pain, and therefore that's how you cope with your pain. You can make changes. You can make changes to your mindset. You can make changes to how you do things. You can start to pick up a dumbbell and start to actually move it up and down. I mean, there's so much. I mean, you can go to another podcast about just how empowered you can be despite your diagnoses. And I think we have a lot of control over our bone density, how the foods that we eat. If we weight train, I mean, that is going to prevent. I mean, I think that honestly, the muscles around your spine, you're going to be able to stabilize your spine further, and it's not going to lead to further severe, let's say, like changes. You're not going to be 2 inches shorter. When you're older, you might just be like a half inch shorter. There's a lot of things that I think people can do.
Yeah, I think the wedge shaped came from compression. And if I'm decompressing that side and promoting or distributing the compression onto the other side, over the long term, there will be changes, and we'll see if that happens. I've been looking for a deeper, like, I think the MRI is a better one, but I would really like a proper 3D scan so I can kind of bring this story a bit more to life instead of having it as this invisible part of us, which is another kind of limiting factor for people, because there's so many anatomical, technical stuff going on that a lot of people don't even begin to imagine their own story, their own programming, their own structuring, and rely on the white coats or someone else to tell them what's happening. And it is also something I pay attention to about not using or not describing myself. And as someone who's like connecting with people who have this condition, I kind of have to say, I have a hyperchital scoliosis and these are the things and blah, blah, blah. But I don't see myself as that. I see myself as an unfolding being who's exploring potential and exploring what can be done through curiosity and play and self-love and optimizing maximum energy flow in the body, right? By tapping into that natural life force, innate energy that we have flowing through us. And that perspective alone is the story that I embody. And that story, regardless of what's going on, like that story, you're like, I'm getting adventures with the story. I'm someone who the mosquitoes don't mess with. Everyone says, oh, the mosquitoes love me. I'm like, if you say so, like me, they don't touch me, because they know if they enter my field, if they come close to me, they will be disintegrated from this existence. Yeah. And I embody that belief. And if they tempt it, I'll embody that as well, right? It's a fun one to practice the story as reality existence. And it works. The mosquitoes, sometimes they test me, but definitely less than the people who are saying, oh, the mosquitoes love me.
I love that. Just the fact that, because I listen to a few of your podcasts, and you can just, it's very similar to how I do my podcast too, or just the way I portray myself to my clients. You portray yourself with such confidence, and the things that you say and the way that you live is going to be a direct embodiment of how people portray you. And the fact is that even despite you having this diagnosis, this hyperkyphosis, I mean, people can feel your energy and they know that you're staying proactive. And I think that's what people have to think about. So I guess there's two things I want to talk about. It's just like the identity piece. If you identify as your diagnoses, you're going to take negative actions. You identify, you see these crazy words that you don't understand, spondylolisthesis and disc degeneration. You are going to identify as that, and you will not take the actions necessary to get yourself out of that funk. You might need a coach to tell you like, hey, it's okay to do a little bit of weight training. That's not going to cause further disc degeneration. If anything, it's going to strengthen and rehydrate that disc further. And I think you hit a really good point. That was about, you're saying like, I don't know where I'm going to be in the next 7 years. And I think there's a lot of people that, and you don't say, I know that you're deathly confident, you're going to stay proactive for 7 years, but there's a lot of people out there that they look too far into the future and they don't stay in the present. And they're just thinking, how am I going to be? If my neck hurts now this bad, how am I going to be in 10 years? And they look so far into the future that it creates worry in the present. And the worry in the present is therefore creating more cortisol secretion. My analogy sometimes is if you're driving a car, stay focused at what's happening in front of you. If there's a car accident, you can stop. If there's going to be traffic, you can stop. If there's no traffic, you can tell yourself to go. But there's some people that are literally either looking behind them, looking at their past and letting their past govern what they do. And then they're looking like way far down the freeway and they're not even looking at the stuff in front of them to the point where they're going to hit a car. They're going to crash themselves. That sounds so cliche, but like staying present and staying proactive now and just taking it day to day and being like, what can I do today that will make a difference for my fascia, my posture, my pain, the way that my life is going now? And what can I do now? And I think that if people do that more, then they don't worry about the future as much. And therefore they have a better and brighter future because they were taking every day trying to get 1% better.
And in that presence, if you connect with your breath and you really kind of relax and let go. Obviously, awareness and letting go for me is like where I kind of begin to help people in their bodies. And when you really let go and you're really present with that, you let go of these compensations, right? Because we have all these compensations to try, to intend, which is great to intend things, right? As you were saying before, having an intention it creates favorable winds. A sailor who doesn't know where he's going, there's no wind that is favorable, right? So it's like having these intentions are beautiful things in our lives. They create purpose and meaning. But every now and then, especially how I like to start my day is by letting go of that and just entering present, where I'm at, and what is my body without these compensations, without trying to stand up straight or trying to build my posture. I'm just like, where am I at if I just don't do that? And I breathe and I relax and I notice that I'm still holding on. I'm like, wow, I have to let go more and more. And I'm like, wow, okay, now I'm in this full collapse. And it's from there where I'm present and connected with that breath. And I believe that's where the healing begins, is when you let go of the past and the future and you just go into that presence with your body, following your breath, allowing your breath, having that goal of that nasal nose breath or mouth breath, whatever in that situation, but really just extending your exhales so you're calming the nervous system and therefore the fascia. And then you're listening, becoming aware, and from there, rebuilding as you go, as you lay the foundations of your intention for that day. I think that's a place people can start to kind of understand the power of presence as you can move into the day.
Absolutely.
All righty. Dr. Jason Wan, thank you for coming on. Who are you helping right now? Who are the people coming to you, and how do you help them? What offerings do you have? Where can they find you?
Yes. Yeah, so people can find me anywhere online as far as social media. Social media handles Flex with Dr. J, posts a lot of stuff around just being a normal, guy with 2 kids, but just trying to inspire people to move better. And the people that we do help, we help a lot of high achieving parents. We help a lot of executive level professionals, people that seemingly have gone sedentary and don't know how to take care of their bodies, and their body's going undergoing a lot of chronic stiffness and pain. Those are the people that we help, and we help them to not just eliminate that pain, but also become stronger, become more resilient. But as you can see in this podcast, is to really change their lifestyle and change their habits and change their approach to staying proactive about their health. And I help pretty much anyone around the world. I've helped people in almost every single continent besides Antarctica. But nonetheless, I love what I do. I do a lot of online coursework, online coaching. And if people wanted to learn more about that, they can go to my profile and to fill out application, or even just to direct message me. Me or my team is more than happy to serve and help people. Anybody online that wants to really make meaningful changes and not just accept chronic pain as their life and their life sentence, but to know that you can actually take full control of it.
Amazing. And I can tell from your personal experiences with the car accident, with that thoracolumbar scoliosis, the insights that has provided you backed with your training and experience, like you're the kind of person that has that ability to be very precise and not rely just on intuition. And then at the same time, also create that permission slip, which I think was what you mentioned before, right? That permission slip to witness and see that, okay, you can do things. This is a testimony to what I'm doubting if is possible or not. And when you can see it, when you see someone like yourself doing that, you create that permission for someone to start that journey and inspire them on that journey. So thank you, Alan, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you letting me on. I definitely enjoyed this, and I can just tell that the way that you do things on your podcast, you're changing people's lives, you're inspiring people to move, and I just thank you for allowing me to be on this platform.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.